Japan looked unified, but one fortress still stood, between victory and total control. Tokugawa Ieyasu had already won Sekigahara, dominated national politics, and built the shogunate that would rule for generations. Yet as long as Osaka Castle remained in Toyotomi hands, the old struggle for power was not truly over. This is the Siege of Osaka, the last stand that ended samurai resistance to Tokugawa rule. To understand why Osaka mattered so much, we begin with Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Hideyoshi rose from humble origins to become the most powerful man in Japan, finishing the work of unification after generations of civil war. But when he died in 1598, his son and heir, Toyotomi Hideyori, was still a child. In a world built on military loyalty, ambition, and inheritance that was dangerous, a child could inherit a name but not personally command obedience. The result was a political vacuum. Tokugawa Ieyasu had been one of Hideyoshi's greatest allies, but after Hideyoshi's death he moved patiently and then decisively. In 1600, he defeated his rivals at Sekigahara. That battle made him the strongest military figure in Japan, but strength is not the same as security. A regime can win and still remain vulnerable if a powerful alternative survives. That alternative was the Toyotomi House. By 1603, Ieyasu had become shogun. Even after passing the title to his son, he still controlled the real machinery of power. On paper, a new order had been established. In practice, Toyotomi Hideyori still lived in Osaka Castle, surrounded by wealth, prestige, and the memory of his father's greatness. For many samurai, especially those who disliked the Tokugawa settlement or had lost status in the new peace, Osaka represented unfinished history. It was the place where the old legitimacy still survived. That was the true threat. Hideyori did not need to conquer Japan himself. He only needed to remain available as a symbol. Discontented samurai, restless lords, and men nostalgic for the Toyotomi era could gather around him. Tokugawa Ieyasu understood this clearly. Osaka was not just a castle. It was a political center that could become a military one at any moment. Osaka Castle made that possibility feel real. It was one of the greatest strongholds in Japan, with massive stone walls, wide moats, and layered defenses. It also stood in a region long central to Japanese politics. If any serious anti-Tokugawa coalition was going to rise, Osaka was the natural place for it. In the years after Sekigahara, tension grew slowly. Tokugawa authority expanded, but so did unease among ronin, the masterless samurai left behind by shifting loyalties and the end of open war. Many had lost lords, purpose, and hope of regaining status. Under a system that rewarded obedience over battlefield opportunity, Osaka gave these men something rare a cause. The final break came in 1614. A bell was cast for a temple linked to the Toyotomi House, and its inscription was interpreted by Tokugawa authorities as politically offensive. Whether that reading was sincere or simply useful mattered less than the result. The controversy provided the pretext Tokugawa power needed. The question was no longer whether Osaka might one day become dangerous. The question was whether the shogunate would destroy it before that danger fully matured. What followed became the winter siege of Osaka. Tokugawa forces mobilized on a national scale. This was a clear message the new regime would not tolerate any rival center. Samurai from across Tokugawa domains assembled for the campaign. Numbers favored the attackers, but Osaka's defenses were too strong for a quick victory. Inside the castle, the defenders prepared for a struggle that would define the fate of the Toyotomi line. Ronin entered in large numbers, many of them veterans, who saw this as their final chance to fight for something larger than personal survival. That gave Osaka a desperate intensity. This was not merely a war over land. It was a collision between an emerging stable regime and the warriors who felt that regime had no place for them. Tokugawa commanders did not rush blindly into the walls. They understood the danger of direct assault. Osaka's moats, elevated positions, and fortifications made it one of the hardest targets in Japan. So the Tokugawa relied on encirclement, artillery, pressure, and controlled attacks designed to wear down resistance. The fortress endured bombardment. Outer positions became zones of constant danger. Defenders resisted fiercely, and some sectors saw intense fighting as Tokugawa forces tried to break morale. Eventually, the winter campaign ended in negotiation. A settlement was reached. At first glance, it looked like compromise had saved the Toyotomi, but the agreement contained the real turning point. As part of the settlement, Osaka's moats and outer defenses were reduced or filled in. That detail was devastating. A fortress is not just walls, it is depth. By removing that depth, the Tokugawa transformed one of Japan's greatest strongholds into a far more vulnerable target. That is why the Winter Peace was not true peace. The Toyotomi had survived the first siege, but in surviving they had lost the very defenses that made long-term resistance possible. Neither side truly believed the issue was settled. In 1615, war returned in what became the Summer Siege of Osaka. This second phase moved much more quickly toward final destruction. Without the same defensive layers, the fortress was more exposed. At the same time, the defenders still possessed determination, and the campaign included major fighting outside the castle itself. Figures like Sanada Yukimura became legendary for their resistance, later remembered as symbols of doomed courage. But courage and victory are not the same thing. The summer campaign exposed the difference between heroism and strategic position. Osaka still had brave warriors willing to die for the Toyotomi cause, but the Tokugawa had what wins civil wars numbers: coordination, supply, command structure, and the ability to absorb losses without losing the larger campaign. Once resistance was compressed into one weakened center, bravery could delay defeat, but not reverse it. As Tokugawa pressure intensified, Osaka's situation deteriorated rapidly. Fires spread. Defensive positions collapsed. The final assault pushed toward the heart of the fortress. At that point, the real question was no longer whether the Toyotomi could continue as a rival power. It was whether they could survive at all. Toyotomi Hideyori and his mother, Yodo Dono, became trapped inside the ruins of what had once seemed strong enough to challenge Tokugawa rule. When Osaka Castle finally fell, the Toyotomi line was destroyed. With that, the last major alternative center of samurai authority disappeared. The political question that had haunted Japan since Hideyoshi's death was now answered permanently. That is why the siege of Osaka matters so much. It was not just the fall of a fortress. It was the moment Tokugawa rule became irreversible. Sekigahara had given Tokugawa Ieyasu victory, but Osaka gave the Tokugawa system finality. A regime can win a war and still remain insecure. Osaka is where insecurity was burned out of the new order. The consequences shaped Japan for centuries. With the Toyotomi destroyed, the shogunate could consolidate a more tightly controlled political structure. Daimyo were monitored more carefully. Potential threats were managed before they could mature. The long peace of the Edo period became more possible because the last serious challenge to Tokugawa supremacy had been crushed. But that peace came at a cost. Samurai, once defined by warfare, increasingly had to live within a system that valued administration, hierarchy, and discipline over battlefield opportunity. In later memory, Osaka came to symbolize the final blaze of an older, samurai world facing extinction. So picture the final image clearly: one of the greatest castles in Japan burning and collapsing, a young heir whose existence alone had become a threat to the strongest regime in the country, veteran warriors making one last stand because peace had left them no place, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, old but relentless, watching the last serious question of national power being settled forever. After Osaka, Japan did not become peaceful because everyone agreed. It became peaceful because the last credible resistance had been eliminated. That is the true meaning of the siege. It ended more than a battle. It ended the possibility that the Toyotomi legacy could return and divide the country again. If Sekigahara decided who would rule Japan, Osaka decided whether anyone could challenge that rule ever again.